where do you come down on the censorship? Because that's another thing Democrats are very positive about. They're very pro censorship, and they think the Twitter files were nothing. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that censorship is a very serious issue, and I think that there are different ways that people can be deplatformed. I've seen in my own life and in my own career, there are different ways that people can be deplatformed. Disinformation is a form of deplatforming. Manipulating a narrative is a form of deplatforming. Making it appear as though you're not who in fact you are, or you are who in fact you're not. That's really that's one aspect of deplatforming. Obviously, I don't think deplatforming should happen, and I look at things such as when Sacha Baron Cohen said back when there was a question about whether or not Hitler was, and whether or not Trump, Freudian slip there, whether or not Trump was going to be taken off Twitter. And I remember hearing Sacha Baron Cohen say, if Hitler were alive today, he would be taking out 30-second ads on Twitter or on Facebook. And that really hit me like a brick to the forehead. So no, I do not believe in deplatforming. And I believe that there are some very, very serious and even evil things that do go on on the internet. On the other hand, I'm as worried as the next person. I don't really trust all aspects of the U.S. government or tech companies to tell me which ones are the ones that should be off.
So would you be against censorship on social media?
I am against censorship on social media. And if I were the president of the United States, I mean, you look at certain things like child pornography. You look at certain things like building bombs and telling people how to kill people. No, I don't think those things should be unpoliced on the internet.
Right. I mean, anything that, sure. Okay. So what about that? So during COVID also, that's another thing. So this crazy shift has happened in the Democratic Party where it went from a left party to a completely authoritarian party, especially around COVID. And what were your feelings about the way the COVID was handled by Joe Biden and the Democrats?
My biggest concern, and the one that's quite upsetting to me right now, is the way he ended the emergency measures, so that millions of people have been cut off from Medicaid, millions of people have been cut off from their SNAP benefits and so forth. That's the part that I'm very upset about right now. Because there's a difference between what they call a screaming emergency and a silent emergency. So when he cut off that emergency status, really it was saying to millions of people, go back to live your life the way it was. But for millions and millions of people, life even before COVID, and definitely now, are also an emergency. Poverty is an emergency. Homelessness is an emergency. Hunger is an emergency. So that's the worst part of it, that those emergency measures were taken away, the moratorium on evictions, the moratorium on repayment of school loans. I think it really lays bare for all to see how cruel our system is at this point.
So the system, not the people running it?
Of course it's the people running it.
Okay. All right. So during COVID, we went into a lot. They did all this because they had mandates and they lied to us. And were there any of the lies that the establishment told? What were some of the lies that they told during COVID that made you the most angry?
I don't know about lies. What I know, my thought was that there were probably very, very good people who went to work every single day and were trying to absolutely do their best. But in this situation, as in pretty much every situation I have related to the U.S. government, I have healthy skepticism. And I felt in that, as I feel in many others, that the pharmaceutical companies, when the pharmaceutical companies wouldn't even call back countries that were poor countries who were looking for the vaccine. And I was very concerned by the fact that there was so little conversation about treatment. In fact, there seemed to be such a suppression of any kind of treatment. You weren't even allowed to say vitamin C. So I didn't have a problem with the fact that a vaccine was being developed, but I did have a problem with the fact that there seemed to be vaccine only conversation that was going on.
So it didn't bother you that they lied when Fauci lied about masks, or when he lied about natural immunity or herd immunity, or when he lied about transmission or contraction? None of those lies bothered you?
So the proposition here is that is fact. I don't believe that Fauci is the Nazi war criminal, as one of my opponents practically says he is. I don't know. I don't know.
You don't know if he lied about masks?
I don't know what he knew.
Well, he admitted he lied about masks. That's why. So you don't even know that he admitted he lied about masks, because he admitted he lied about it.
He admitted that, yeah, but he didn't admit that he consciously, purposely.
No, he did.
lied.
He did. He admitted that he. Of course, he did. Of course, he admitted. He said he lied about it because they didn't have enough masks for hospital workers, so they had to lie so people wouldn't go out and buy them, and that's why that's called the noble lie. And so that's what I'm talking about. That's one thing he lied. He also admitted he lied about herd immunity and that he would change those numbers as he felt. So that's two, and CNN even exposed that lie. So those are two lies. And then, of course, you know that they said that if you took the vaccine, it would stop the virus dead and stop the transmission. And you know they said that, and you know they lied when they were saying that, because Pfizer never even tested for that. And in the data, they all knew that. So they were saying that at a time. So these are the lies I'm talking about. You're not familiar with these lies?
I'm familiar with the controversy around it. Definitely. I am not enrolled in the way you are naming those things as though those were conscious lies that were spoken at the time in every instance. No, I'm not.
Well, Fauci admits to two of those lies. Do you know that? What about when he lied about gain of function, funding gain of function? He lied about that twice to Congress. And they also lied about where the virus came from. It came from a lab in Wuhan. And then we find out through the Freedom of Information request, we find out that Fauci used his power of funding to get those scientists to lie and change, and then you were called a white supremacist if you said that the virus came from a lab. So you're not upset about that either?
Yes, I am, Jimmy. Yes, I am.
Oh, good. Okay, that's good.
So, yes, I do believe it's from a lab. I always felt that it was from a lab. And I was very concerned and skeptical about that whole story, including the possibility of U.S. involvement from the beginning. On that one, I will give you. I absolutely.
And that he lied about funding that gain of function in Wuhan. He lied twice to Congress. I caught him twice. He probably did it more.
So if he did, then he should be held accountable, because terrible things happened.
So this is what I'm talking about. These aren't these aren't differences of opinion.
Well, I disagree with you about that, because I feel that even with what you're talking about with COVID, it's a narrative that, much like as you talk about Ukraine, quoting George Bush, some good people can disagree. And when it comes to the issues about Fauci, I think that we are coming on to a time when there does need to be complete transparent. I don't know if we'll ever have it, but a transparency and investigation into what actually happened, and the U.S. and the actions of the U.S. government and what agencies. All that should be laid bare, and anyone who in any way betrayed the American people should be held accountable.
So it doesn't sound like you have enthusiasm for that kind of an investigation, but did you ever see that movie?
No, wait, excuse me. I do have enthusiasm for that kind of investigation. I don't think it will be easy to make it happen, but I absolutely would take an act of Congress to have that kind of investigation. And if we have enough progressives in Congress, or actually that might even be conservatives in Congress, that to me isn't even about left or right. I would absolutely support full accounting of what actually happened during COVID. In fact, I think absolutely it should happen.
Well, that certainly puts you outside the Democratic Party for sure. So
many things do, Jimmy. Obviously, so, maybe we'll get to some of them. Yeah, I am not with the.
That's really. So tell me, So I said the same thing to RFK Jr. when he came on the show, because here they're not going to give you a debate, right? So they're not going to let you debate him, and and then his allies brush off the call for a debate. And so what I told RFK Jr. was, you'd be better off running as a Republican, because Republicans don't have super delegates, and the reason why the Democrats have the super delegates is so someone like you can't win, and so you'll never win. And so why run inside the Democratic Party? Why not run outside the Democratic Party?
Well, the question, everything that you're saying is true. I mean, I don't know that last sentence, they'll never let. The issue is whether or not you could ever create a situation where they didn't have the choice. That's number one. One could also say about someone, let's say like Cornel West, why are you running as a third party that will never win? I think whether it's Cornel or Bobby or myself, each of us has to just go in that direction that our own gut says is the place where we could be most helpful. You know, there are many ways when it comes to the corporate tyranny that now dominates this country, the oligarchic system that has really, for all intents and purposes, replaced democracy. If you look at it one way, it's all locked up. But I believe that there's going to be a break. Now, everybody is part of it. One person feels I'm going to do a podcast. Another person feels I'm going to start a TV network. Another person feels I'm going to write a book. Another person feels I'm going to run for office. I think we all have to just continue to put our energy out in whatever way possible to create a force field that is a genuine fundamental alternative to oligarchy and a real way to help save our democracy. There's each person has to just go where they feel that their skills, their expertise can be best put to use. And I think all of it is building energy that is going to, at some point, in some way, bring the oligarchic house down. And none of us can, you know, certainly you could say to an abolitionist, there's no way you're going to end slavery. They would have said to a woman suffragist, there's no way you're going to pass the 19th Amendment. They would have said to early labor organizers, there's no way you're going to fight the overreach of the Gilded Age. You could say to civil rights workers, there's no way you're going to desegregate the South. I don't think social justice issues are always promulgated by people who have a guarantee that the result is going to be what they want it to be when they want it to be. That's not how doing the right thing. When you're thinking of doing the right thing, it's not because you feel a guarantee you're going to have the result, a certain kind of result, but because you have faith that ultimately the right thing is going to happen. Where you are going to be in the assembly line, you can never know, but that should never be one's personal question. It should never be just about you. What's it going to be for me? It should be about what's going to serve the process. And all these squad people that you're talking about, these great progressives in Congress, where are they?
Well,
where are they? So if nobody else is standing up, I will.
Well, they're out. They're also out there being pro-war. So that's the biggest issue right now. As we said, how much money do you think we should send to Ukraine? We sent over $100 billion, while there are people living under every bridge in America, and 80% of workers live paycheck to paycheck. How much money do you think we should have sent to Ukraine?
We have $858 billion that goes into our yearly defense budget. So the overspending by the military is a huge issue, of which Ukraine is a small part. And the fact that we are not funding the people of the United States and the actualization of their dreams is, to me, basically the reason I'm running. But I don't see that as dependent on whether or not we're spending money on Ukraine.
So $100 billion, which they say could end homelessness 4 times over in the United States, that's not a lot of money?
That's not the issue. The issue is that you could say that about any of the money that we spend on the $2 trillion tax cut that should be repealed, where 83 cents of every dollar went to the highest earners and the richest corporations. The billions of dollars we give in subsidies to corporations that are already making billions of dollars. Plus the fact.
So why do you think it is that we can, at the drop of a hat, send $100 billion to Ukraine, the most corrupt country in Europe, but we can't fund our own homelessness in America? Why do you think that is?
Because funding homelessness in America does not serve anybody's corporate bottom line.
And so this war is for corporate bottom line.
Definitely on this one, it is true that this happens to be making money for Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and
so it's not really about helping the people, because if it was about helping the people, we'd start here first, right?
No, actually, listen, Jimmy.
We start over in Ukraine.
We're going to just sit here and you're going to.
I'm sorry, I gave you a tough question. Now try to answer it.
Not about that. I do not believe that if only we were not supporting Ukraine, all that money would then go to help the homeless in America.
Well, why would?
I just don't. Because that's how America.
So you're still.
You know that, Jimmy.
So okay. So you're the one who said The reason why we don't take that money and give it to homeless people is because of corporate corruption. And that's why we take the money and give it to corporations in the form of military aid to Ukraine. You're the one who just said that.
However, no.
So you're for corporate corruption in Ukraine before we fix homelessness.
Can I get in there? I mean,
yeah. Please stop pretending that I'm not letting you talk. Okay, stop doing that.
No, will you stop? You've always been an honorable interviewer with me before, and I'm
being so right now. So quit pretending.
I believe that you are. However, the fact that there are some neocons with whom on this issue I agree on some things. You could talk about Matt Gaetz. You would talk about Matt Gaetz and his views on Africa. I probably agree with him on military installations in Africa. We have 750 military installations around the world in 80 countries. One of the first things I do is unilaterally start closing some of those. But that doesn't mean I agree with Matt Gaetz on everything. There are conservatives sometimes who I would agree with on certain things, and that would be an example. That doesn't mean I agree with him on everything.
Well, Marianne, I wish you luck in your campaign. Thanks for coming on, and
but thank you anyway. And I appreciate seeing you, and I wish you the best always.
Okay, right back at you. Come see our live shows. We're going to be in Chicago, Rosemont, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, New York City, Pottstown, Pennsylvania, Stamford, Toronto, Toledo, Detroit, St. Louis, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.